Okay, so here's the part that I'm really excited about. We're not just going to tell you what to do and leave you to figure it out. We're actually going to do the assignment with you, live, every single step. Let's do it, shall we? What do you think, Akash?
Sure. I'm going to be taking the appointing party role and do assignments live. So you will see every click that I'm making, every decision, every moment where something makes you stop and think. You will do the same thing right alongside with me.
And I'll be doing the same way. So you are never stuck wondering what to do next. We are right there with you.
And I know that 4 assignments might sound like a lot right now, but it's actually not. By the time you've done this, you're going to look back and you'll think, that wasn't as complicated as I first thought. And because the workflow now makes sense, each step, because it led naturally to the next step, and everything inside of ISO 19650 as a workflow will make sense to you, and you'll be able to be the leader and implement this on projects that you're working on. All right, so now you've got your account sorted, get your project created, and let's get into it. Assignment 1 is the first one up, and now I have officially appointed Akash as my information manager for this project. So let's get going, shall we? Let's go, Akash.
Let's go.
Great stuff. So Akash now has his account all ready to go. And we also have our assignment page up. In this assignment, we have 4 separate sections, and we're going to be learning by doing, going through real roles and delivering really actually what matters on a project. There are these 4 assignments, as I mentioned, and you are going to take different ownership, different roles in each of these. There's a lot about how to get started inside of the assignment, but we're already there. If you are a lecturer, a teacher, a guide throughout this process, there are some instructions for you as well on how to set this up. But let's look at the 4 workflow assignments. The first one is going to be the information production requirements, or the exchange information requirements, or going back all the way to the employer's information requirements. There are lots of different ways that we would define this, but essentially, what does the owner care about? What does the client need? And what's important to them? So the 3 steps that we're going to be going through inside of this first assignment, it will be creating all of those requirements in a document, and then structuring their requirements in the scope so that they are clear and they're checkable. There's something that's actually got a definition of what good looks like and what acceptable criteria are needed to be passed. And then we'll look at the final deliverable as an export. So the first step is accessing and completing that EIR document. We have a template that's already set up that you can use the smart fields to pre-fill. Akash, you can access the template via the library on the left-hand side. And once you've added the content, you'll see it looking like this. So why don't you take that away and get us started?
Sure. I'm going to create a new project. Let's call it ISO 19650 Specialist Assignment. And right away, I'm going to find myself in the Docs feature set. And exactly here, the first document that I'm looking for is the contract example, which does contain an EIR that we wanted to put together. So I'm going to go ahead and add this entire document to my project.
Cool. That's pretty easy. Okay, I think that it would be best to switch some sections to be shared, and then you can complete the smart fields and read through the document and see where you have to fill things in.
Absolutely. Let's start with the mission and values, vision, mission and values, reading that through, sharing it with the team. I can expect now comments and feedback about the document section. And I can go through these document sections one by one, setting the status to shared. So that's when others would be reading it and giving me feedback. What I'm also looking for in this example is what we call the smart fields, placeholders in my template document that some of them would automatically be filled out with system information, just like, for example, the project title. Some others I would have to fill out. So when it comes to project description, I can be very specific and define my project, just like calling it an awesome project. I wish I could type awesome project. In all occurrences of the smart field, this value is going to be added. So it is going to be called an awesome project.
That's pretty awesome. So as you go through, you can complete those different sections, make amendments to the document, but also make those smart field completions so that you know that you're filling in the right places inside of a document. And when you're in the shared status, so if you have a document and some of that content is actually in shared status, can you still complete the smart fields? What's the purpose and the workflow here?
Absolutely. So sharing the document section with our collaborators, internal, external teams, depending on their permissions, they would be able to come in and fill out these smart fields, highlighting where they have to contribute to the document.
Very cool. And then at the same time, are they able to make edits to the rest of the document?
Not edits to the rest of the document, but what they should be doing in order to make sure that there is a full agreement between the different stakeholders is to comment. So highlighting a piece of the document would mean that they can start adding comments, questions, feedback about the content, and that starts a workflow. Resolving those comments and incorporating those comments will result in the true agreement between the parties.
Very cool. Okay, so what we've just seen is, let me switch back to our instructions. So we can see here that we've defined now and filled in some of those sections so that we've got a complete EIR, or the Information Production Requirements. And this is really important because we start to become actually clear on what's required. And that becomes even more clear when we jump into the information requirements in the scope. And let's jump here into the next step, which is starting to use structured data and structured requirements, in this case, the asset requirements. And Akash is going to download this file and use it as an import to be able to create a scope and understand what specific trades are required, and then build out their requirements. And if I go to the bottom here, you'll see that even including the information requirements in each of these, and then also adding, using AI to create some of the requirements, their images and their geometry that's required in the model. So Akash, do you want to take us away with this step of adding the structured information requirements in the scope?
So what we did in the docs module is coming from a generic template and as quickly, as efficiently as possible, ending up with a project-specific agreement by filling out the smart fields and sharing certain pieces of the document with the team members, and then incorporating their feedback into our document, and also increasing accountability by assigning document sections to certain team members, so they are going to be held accountable for creating this true agreement between the different parties for that given document section. This is much more structured than working with word processing. This is more of a database-driven exercise that we are doing here. And as an outcome, we can expect a true agreement between the stakeholders. For the information requirements that need tracked, managed, and controlled, we are switching to our scope module.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's step 1.1 that we've completed and really clearly defined the EIR, or the information requirements that are needed from a project perspective. But now we're going to jump into, as Akash mentioned, the really clearly defined information requirements in the scope. And this is where we will start to define the asset requirements. We'll have a file that we can download, but Akash will first start in the scope by defining some folders for these items that will become the tasks. The air terminals, mechanical equipment, lighting fixtures, these are all the assets that the operator of the building, the main asset, that will want to understand, control, maintain, and monitor to make sure that they're performing as expected. So inside of the scope, Akash, let's start by creating these folders, and inside of the folders, let's then add these tasks. Would you like to take that away?
Absolutely. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to close this library on the left side. This is where we would find otherwise predefined elements, systems, something that we want to manage, let them be deliverables on any kind of tasks or activities. We also have templates, classification structures, example projects, lots of information that we are not going to use today. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this library. And in this clean interface, I'm going to start creating the folders. First folder, architecture.
Second folder, mechanical. And the third folder is called electrical. As easy as that. And then inside of those folders, you're going to add some tasks. The interior walls inside of the architecture. And then inside the mechanical, you're going to add air terminals and mechanical equipment. And then inside of the electrical, mechanical equipment. And inside of the electrical, we're going to add the lighting fixtures and cable trays with fittings. And I can see that you've added them all underneath the folders. And then we will need to indent them or put them into the hierarchy so that they are sitting inside of those folders. At the moment, we've got folders and task rows. By dragging them to the right, you can see here now Akash is dragging them just one stage to the right, and they are sitting now inside of that folder hierarchy. So we've got folders and then task rows that are inside of each of those folders. Excellent. The next step is we're going to rename milestone 1 to be operation. So we're looking at that milestone as being the delivery of the operational asset, and potentially it could be that is the asset information requirements or the asset information model that is being delivered at this stage. We could add a date and a description, but let's just say that that's now the operation milestone. And now we are ready to import the CSV file into the information requirements. Maybe you could just introduce what the difference is between the list that we've defined and the information requirements that we are going to import.
Absolutely. So on the vertical axis, what we see is a discipline breakdown structure. It could be any kind of classification structures that we want to define. And in this folder structure, we see certain elements, systems that we want to request, manage, and after that, control the information creation. But what information is requested, that's something that we are going to define on the bottom of the screen under the project information requirements, where we can manually define all the different kind of values of the information requirements, starting with a group, a p-set, a name, a description for a human reading, and then what kind of values we are expecting under the verification rules, what kind of rules are going to be applicable for our certain information requirement that is being defined, numbers, dates, text, any kind of values, and even units of measurement. So we could define it here manually as well, but for the sake of the exercise, what we are going to do is we are going to rather import a CSV file for this purpose.
Perfect. And just before you import, let me switch screens just so that we can have a quick recap. So we have created and indented all of the task rows, and then we have gone to click on the milestone, and we've renamed the milestone to be the operations milestone. And then at the bottom, we saw that tab, the information tab, that we can open up, and we could create these from scratch, or we could go to the import on the top right side. The imported requirements are going to be different for each and every task on the project. The requirements that we're going to import are associated for the interior walls. They're associated with the acoustic rating and the material. For the air terminals, we've got flow and the level and the static pressure drop and the system classification and so on. And these will be imported into this information requirements panel at the bottom, and they will then be assigned to each of those activities, each of those tasks. So, Akash, do you want to go through those next steps?
Yep. Next step is importing the CSV, which I already downloaded from this help article. When clicking on the import CSV function, we see how the data actually has to be structured in order to be able to import it into Planoly. And in order to help with that process, we can download an example CSV file or even an XLSX template with pick lists. So that is mirroring the Planoly database, and you can make sure that using these starting points will allow you to import your data.
And a quick tip here, using some AI tools, we've found that it's actually really quick to reformat a bunch of data that you already have into a format that can be imported into Planoly. We're also adding some tools to make that even easier just inside of Planoly as well. So watch out for that soon.
So I'm just looking into my local drive and importing the asset information requirements by just dropping CSV file here. And once imported, we see all these information requirements created in Planoly.
Very cool. So that was easy. How do we assign the right ones to the right rows, the task rows in the grid?
In order to assign information requirements in the grid, we have to select the ones that we want to assign, and then just click in the grid, add the element itself, the requirement, together with the information requirements. In order to make this easier, we can also use tags. And we, in this example, have predefined a couple of tags that will allow us to filter this list of information requirements. And for example, to start with the walls, see those two pieces of information requirements that I have to assign to my interior walls.
Excellent. So the acoustic rating and the material, you can select both of them and then click the add and assign button, and that will do both things at the same time. So if you open up that row now, perfect. We can see that we have interior walls, and we have the requirement at the milestone of operation, and we have those two checked information requirements at that stage. Perfect. What's next?
Next, air terminals.
Excellent. So that was great. You've now got the rows of tasks along with the indented underneath information requirements. The cell in the grid represents the task at the milestone, and you can see which requirements are needed at that point. So you can have multiple milestones where you are increasing or decreasing the amount of information required at each stage. And one of the quick ways to assign, as we saw there, was to select using the filter to filter out some tags and to select the ones that are filtered and then make that assignment. Going through that process, we ended up with all of those requirements being assigned. And then one of the things that we don't see yet is the set of nice images, Akosh. Maybe you could share how we would then generate those images. It says using AI here. Let's take a look. Let me switch back to you.
Let's use AI then. We just have to locate the AI button and going through the grid, starting the process, these images are going to be defined for us.
Very cool. And what's happening right now is that all of the information about that thing is being processed to be able to understand what it should look like at different stages in a project. And you'll see these images coming back. It's not just the 3D image that you'll see, but also we'll start to see some fabrication level. We'll see some 2D representation or some geometry that's very simple representation. And that's because the images are being generated for lots of different representations at the same time. And if we wait there, you can see now there's a line drawing being shown, for example, in the operations grid. And now it's important for us to choose what actual geometry are we looking for at the same time as this information being delivered at the operation phase. So maybe, Akosh, you could choose some requirement geometry.
The easiest way to do that is just hovering over the information container cell, and using the plus minus buttons will allow us to define the geometry and reliability of the given element. As I go higher, the AI generated images are going to show different levels of requirements.
Perfect. So the mechanical equipment I see there is probably something that we're going to need a higher level geometry, but maybe it's not necessarily fabrication level. It could be the detailed elements that are in proposed location, maybe, or maybe they need to be in the installed location. So you can start to describe exactly what the geometry is and how reliable that geometry is as well. And one of the other things that we could do is we could define how accurate it is, but maybe that's for another day, a more advanced course. Excellent. So if we flip back to the instructions, now we've got some geometry requirements, and the clear definition in the scope is being able to now assign those tasks and have clear definition of what the requirements are so that they can be tracked and controlled right the way through. You can really enforce accountability because you have clearly defined what is required by whom at what stage. So the next step is we're going to prepare those information requirements as a final deliverable. And step 1.3 is where we will create that tender relevant EIR, the sections that are shared, that are ready from the tender documentation that we saw inside of our project. Maybe actually we're going to move these to be published sections, and the published sections are the ones that are going to be exported in a document. So not only do you have a set of requirements in an online form that can be collaborated on and can be actually truly agreed, you also have to get the agreement as a PDF. PDF is our industry standard, and it's something that we can also get an e-signature, so we have a smart contract of those requirements. Let's take a look at how we would do that, Akosh.
So as a next step, we are going to create a combined output from our EIR document and the detailed information requirements. One thing before doing that, before creating a PDF output, I just want to assign one of these tasks to a certain team. I haven't defined any teams yet, so let's just assign it to my own team, the ABC manager team. So now we can also see that these tasks are definitely going to be assigned to certain teams, even team members, to make sure that there is accountability and someone is going to be responsible for delivering them. So I just assigned this interior walls to my own team. And in the meantime, in the docs module, we've gone through the different document sections as well. And whichever is ready for signatures, we're set to published. With all this prepared, let's go and create a combined appointment document. We do that by locating the export function, and we would have access to a number of different file formats to be exported to, but we are going to go with the PDF for now.
Okay, so let's check the document index so we know what we're including in this. At the moment, obviously nothing, but let's check the contract example for ISO 19650. So now we can see that's the first document that's included. And in the all sections dropdown, let's choose just the ones that are published. So we filter out in that document just the published content. And if you scroll down on the right-hand side, you're seeing a preview at the moment. So you can start to see those sections. And at the moment, we've got a nice title page and automatically created table of contents, and then all of the content from our agreement. Let's also add the grid of requirements from the scope and scroll back up to the document index so we can see that there is now a second document added, which is the grid of requirements. Okay, great. So now we've got two documents as part of this combined set of requirements. We've got a docs and a scope, and that will combine into one PDF. And how would we want to name this?
Let's call it an invitation to tender.
Perfect. And now when we hit create, that will join all of these document pieces together. It will also put all of the indexes in automatically, for both the content and also the images and the tables, and everything will automatically be created. And all of the hyperlinks between all the sections and all of the content as well that is generated from that export. So if you click on one of these titles, you're taken directly to that part of the document as well. Perfect. And then if you scroll further, you should see all of the scoping that we have defined with the information requirements. Perfect. So historically, this would be a really troublesome task. I remember so many times formatting Word documents and exporting them to PDFs, and formatting Excel documents, exporting to PDFs, then trying to combine those documents, and then trying to put cover pages and putting tables of contents and a whole bunch of things. It was a painful process. So with one click, we've done that. And if anything updates, we can just simply click once to reversion that document as well. Perfect. So that was pretty simple to create the document. We just simply tell it which pieces we want, and it will combine them and do all of the automation for you. This is really important because you spend your time actually focused on the collaboration and getting to agreement rather than all of the administration burden. And it's important as well to share the right content. So you saw there where Akos was filtering for just the published sections. They were the ones that were authorized for use. And that was really important so that we could work on content, and only the information that was ready that should be shared in that invitation to tender, that's what was actually shared. So it's the right supporting evidence, and that's the right information. So that completes assignment 1. Excellent. So if you've been following along with Akos, you've now created the EIR in the docs, which is fantastic. And you've also created a detailed set of requirements in the scope, your structured information requirements. And then you've also now combined them into a final set of deliverables. So that's the tender that's starting to become actually something that people can really use, something that you can refine and track and manage and control on a project, not just some words or some acronyms or some theory. This is actually how you go about it on a real project. Congratulations, that's assignment 1, a big check mark. Fantastic. Let's move on to assignment 2. We'll see you in there.